It had been built by the Galactic Empire for ceremony, a place where banners of conquered worlds hung in obedient stillness, where dignitaries whispered of trade routes and taxes while polished marble swallowed echoes. Today, though, the hall bore a coffin at its center, and inside that coffin lay a human general who had once made even admirals tremble. They killed him because he was dangerous. That much the aliens knew. Dangerous in the way a storm is dangerous, not because it intends cruelty, but because it cannot help what it destroys. Yet the irony was lost on them, for they believed the storm had ended with his last breath. His widow stood at the coffin's side, hands folded neatly before her, her black dress plain by galactic standards, modest as prairie morning cloth compared to the jeweled silks of senators. Her hair was bound tight, her posture unyielding. She was young to be called a widow, and beautiful in the way humans sometimes are when sorrow sharpens features instead of dulling them. Her eyes, however, carried something the assembled species could not categorize. Aliens whispered from the gallery seats that climbed like an amphitheater around the hall. A droning insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles in sympathy. A crystalline envoy of the friend vibrated softly, its tones translating as, "How fragile Deathworlders are, so emotional, so quick to flame out." The gathered dignitaries nodded. She heard all. The acoustics of the chamber ensured that whispers spilled forward like water, that even those trying to be discreet offered her their mockery. She did not flinch. She let them murmur about her fragility, her tears that had not yet fallen, her smallness beside the coffin of a man the galaxy had feared. She smiled instead, thin as a blade, and the smile unsettled those close enough to see it. Humans smile for many reasons, though aliens rarely understand this. The widow knew that. Her husband had once teased her, "We're the only species that bears teeth both in love and in warning. Confuses the hell out of them, Angie." They had not called her by name today. They had referred to her only as the widow of General. It suited her. She wanted anonymity more than sympathy. The Empire's emissary approached the coffin with a practiced bow, his robes a cascade of red trimmed with gold. His face, though humanoid, was too symmetrical, too cultivated, like a mask carved by artisans. "On behalf of the Eternal Emperor," he intoned, voice echoing across the marble dome, "we offer our deepest condolences to humanity for this regrettable end. Let it be remembered that peace requires sacrifice, and today we honor one who gave all." The pause before the word honor was deliberate. The dignitaries caught it, smirking into their sleeves or twitching their appendages in quiet laughter. The widow inclined her head. Her voice, when it came, was soft, steady, without tremor. "I thank the Eternal Emperor for his gracious words. Truly, sacrifice is the marrow of peace." Polite, even grateful. But those who listened closely heard the strange cadence, the layered tone. Sacrifice is the marrow of peace. Not a concession, not surrender, but marrow, bone deep, sustenance. She stepped closer to the coffin, her hands brushing the cold edge. For a long moment, she simply looked down at her husband's face. The preservation field kept him intact, skin pale but proud, jawline firm even in death. He looked almost asleep, as though he might wake and tell her a joke about the absurdity of politicians. He had been like that, always finding humor, even on the brink of battle. He laughed when missiles were locked, she whispered, not to them, but to the silence itself. Yet the silence carried, and the words rippled through the crowd. Aliens exchanged nervous glances. Humans in attendance straightened with pride. A hulking reptilian governor leaned to his neighbor and muttered, "Deathworlder rituals. They romanticize violence." Her gaze flicked toward him. She smiled again, wider this time, a gentle curve that reached her eyes. He laughed because laughter steadies the hand. She said, louder now, projecting across the amphitheater. "It unsettles enemies. It comforts allies. It reminds one's own soul that fear can be bent, just like steel can be tempered." There was a murmur, humorless, uneasy. A diplomat from the Orlax Confederation raised a brow ridge. "Your general was remarkable, but alone even remarkable blades dull." True. She let the word hang, her smile never fading. but dull blades still cut if wielded with intent. Her politeness was not a shield, it was a scalpel. Every word precise, every gesture measured. She embodied the composure of a woman attending ceremony, yet beneath the silk of her voice lay iron that some could sense but not name. The service proceeded. Chants hummed by a chorus of alien voices, eulogies offered by Earth's representatives. One human senator stumbled through his words, careful not to appear provocative. He spoke of partnership, of shared horizons. She let him finish without change of expression, though her hands clenched once behind her back. When it was her turn again, she stepped to the dais. 1,000 eyes, 100 lenses, countless alien orbs fixed on her. The air itself seemed to sharpen. "I stand here not as senator or soldier," she began, "but as wife. I stand as the one who shared his table, his coffee, his weariness at night." I knew the man behind the medals. He was not flawless. He was stubborn. He sang off-key. He burned toast. But he believed fiercely in duty. He believed peace was worth any price, including his own. Her voice trembled just enough to be human. A pause, long and aching. She let her tears shimmer, but did not let them fall. "And so I thank you," she continued, steady once more, "for teaching me the true meaning of peace. You say it requires sacrifice. Perhaps you are right, but you have mistaken whose sacrifice it will be." There it was, wrapped in gratitude, delivered like a prayer, yet carrying the weight of prophecy. Several alien dignitaries stiffened. The emissary, in red, shifted uncomfortably. The hall did not know whether to applaud or recoil. She stepped down from the dais and returned to the coffin. She bent, pressed her lips gently against the glass, and whispered where no ear was meant to hear. Yet microphones carried it anyway. "They think you were the storm, my love. But you were just the thunder. I am the lightning." The silence afterward was a living thing, stretching long enough that the insects clicked nervously, and the crystalline envoy let out an accidental discordant tone. Finally, the officiant declared the end of ceremony. The coffin would be sealed and sent on its journey to Earth soil. Dignitaries filed out, their murmurs a mix of derision and unease. Some dismissed her words as grief. Others carried them like stones in their stomachs. She remained, alone beside the coffin as the hall emptied. The banners of conquered worlds swayed faintly, though there was no wind. Her reflection hovered over his still face in the preservation glass. "You taught me poker," she said softly, tracing the edge of the coffin with one finger. "Never show your hand too soon. Smile. Always smile." Her lips curved once more, a smile both tender and terrible. The doors closed, muffling the last of the departing dignitaries. The great chamber dimmed, leaving her in half-shadow. She placed her palm flat on the glass, eyes bright not with tears, but with a fire none there had understood. Her whisper was carried only to him, yet the echo seemed to travel far beyond the hall, into the bones of the galaxy itself. "I'll make sure they know. I'll make sure they regret laughing at Deathworlder grief." And for the first time since his coffin was laid in the chamber, her smile broke into something larger, sharper. It was not the smile of a widow. It was the smile of war. The widow's mourning tour began quietly, with no banners, no grand procession, only the soft shuffle of human aides who carried datapads and the ever-present black-clad figure who seemed more apparition than diplomat. Each stop she made across the stars was dressed in the language of peace. She came not as commander, but as grieving spouse, and the galaxy, always eager for displays of weakness, opened its doors to her. The first reception was held on Varkesh, a world of mist-shrouded mountains and insect palaces. Its rulers buzzed in crystalline domes, their wings shimmering in the artificial light. They regarded her with the indulgence given to an endangered creature. The Varkeshi chancellor leaned close, his compound eyes reflecting her small figure. "We regret your loss," he said, each word a drone that vibrated the floor beneath her shoes. He was brave for a human. But bravery does not stop inevitability. She smiled, faint as candlelight. "You're right," she said. "Bravery alone never stops inevitability. It just decides who remembers it." The Chancellor chittered approvingly, certain he had been agreed with, and moved on. Her aides made notes no one could read over their shoulders. Later, trade routes through Varkashi space experienced sudden accidents. Pirates vanished. Supply barges were lost to unknown raiders. Insurance companies complained. The Chancellor never suspected the polite widow had planted the seeds with a single conversation. On Carthan Prime, she was received by amphibious nobles whose halls smelled of brine and old salt. They offered condolences in tones that dripped more curiosity than sympathy. One sleek official asked, "Tell us, Deathworlder, what do humans do when grief grips them? Drown in fermented liquid? Strike each other until the sadness dulls?" She laughed softly, her voice carrying like ripples across water. "Sometimes we play baseball," she said. "A bat, a ball, a crowd that shouts when the swing is true. We run in circles until we come home again." The officials blinked, their wide eyes uncomprehending. Circles? For amusement. She tilted her head, smile lingering. Amusement, yes. But also instruction. It teaches us patience, timing, how to turn grief into momentum, how to run the bases even when the crowd is against you. They nodded as though humoring a child. Days later, their patrol fleets were baited into pursuing phantom human craft in endless loops around gas giants, chasing decoys until their fuel ran low. When real human ships struck, the Carthan Prime admirals found themselves out of position, helpless to defend. Everywhere she went, she left the impression of a woman carrying sorrow with grace. She never raised her voice, never let anger harden her tone. She spoke of coffee, of burnt toast, of the small absurdities of life with her husband. Aliens listened, amused at the trivialities. Yet every detail she dropped was part of a larger weave. Supply schedules hidden in anecdotes, warnings disguised as nostalgia, troop movements veiled as stories of sleepless nights. On Orly Station, an elder of the star-faring lore whispered to her in the quiet of a corridor, away from cameras and audiences. "You smile too much," the lore rasped, their voice like gravel dragged across metal. The others laugh at it. "But I have seen predators smile before they kill. I do not laugh." Her eyes softened, genuine warmth shining through. "Then you see clearly," she said. The lore shivered, their ancient scales clicking faintly. They did not attend the next council session. Rumors spread that the elder had retired. In truth, they had vanished, their ship never reaching its supposed destination. Her days became a rhythm. Condolences by morning, polite banquets by evening, whispers in corridors at night. She drank the wine poured for her, but never too much. She bowed with perfect grace, her gestures small, her words deceptively plain. Where others would rage, she spoke with calm. Where others might beg for sympathy, she offered courtesy. And with every smile, she planted another seed. One Orlax senator cornered her at a banquet, his tendrils curling in mirth. "Your species hides behind sentiment. You must admit it, human. Your general's death proves that." She lifted her glass, her lips curving. "Sentiment hides nothing," she replied. "It reveals, but not all at once. Do you know poker?" "Poker," he repeated, unfamiliar with the word. "It's a game of chance. But really, it's a game of patience. You show nothing until the pot is heavy enough. Then you smile and you win." The senator chuckled, certain she was charmingly naive. Later that month, his sector's fleet fell into ambush at a supply hub. The trap sprung only after the humans let him believe victory was already in his grasp. Every polite conversation she carried was a blade hidden in velvet. Her voice was the sheath. Her smiles were the distraction. Behind her, unseen hands tightened nets around the galaxy. Her aides, loyal men and women in dark suits, rarely spoke aloud, but in private they whispered their awe. "She's turning their arrogance into the rope," one said, voice hushed over encrypted channels. "They don't even know she's already tying the knots." Still, some aliens began to wonder. A crystalline envoy muttered to its counterpart, "She carries grief like a cloak, yet her eyes sharpen when no one watches. Perhaps her mourning is not what it seems." But when never doubt surfaced, she disarmed it with humor. At one council dinner, an admiral asked, "Is it true humans still eat animals with fire?" "Yes," she said cheerfully. "We call it barbecue. We stand around the flames, drink beer, and wait for the meat to char. It's social. We smile. Always smile." Laughter rang around the table. "Savages," someone exclaimed. She sipped her drink calmly. "Perhaps. But when the meat is ready, no one leaves hungry." The laughter faltered, confused at the undertone, but she had already turned to another topic, leaving them to puzzle. Whispers spread. Ships went missing. Depots burned. Pirates, who had plagued trade routes for decades, suddenly vanished. Some believed the widow's mourning tour carried more than condolences. Others dismissed the thought as paranoia. After all, what could one woman do? At night, alone in her quarters, she sat by windows that opened to the scatter of stars. She touched the ring on her finger, the one he had given her when promises had been made on a quiet Earth evening. She whispered to it, as though to him, "They think you were the war, love. They don't understand. You were just the beginning." Her eyes flicked across the stars, and her aides, watching from shadowed corners, knew she was not gazing in sorrow. She was mapping trajectories. It was during her stop on Firaxis that the shift truly began. A senator, too drunk on spiced liquor, leaned close to her at the banquet table. His voice slurred as he said, "Tell me, widow, do humans break so easily in bed as they do in war?" The hall fell into strained silence. All eyes turned to her. An insult, blatant and cruel, but cloaked in the excuse of intoxication. She laughed. Clear. Soft. Almost girlish. "Easily," she repeated. "My husband once worked 18 hours in a day, fought 3 battles, then still had the strength to burn toast in the morning. Does that sound easy to you?" The table erupted in uneasy chuckles. The senator flushed, confused, suddenly defensive. She smiled again, tilting her glass, her gaze unyielding as it met his. "Strength," she said gently, "is not measured by how quickly one breaks. It's measured by how long one endures. And humans, well, we endure with smiles." The senator said nothing more. 2 weeks later, his world's shipyards burned, their sparks visible from orbit. The galaxy began to tremble, though no one could yet name why. Trade lanes twisted in chaos, outposts went dark, whispers of human raids grew louder. Yet whenever the question arose at councils, the widow sat serenely, hands folded, smile soft, voice polite. Her charm disarmed them. Her words were always wrapped in courtesy, never sharp enough to draw blood outright. But behind every toast, behind every anecdote of burnt coffee or baseball, she sharpened the blade of inevitability. One elder alien finally voiced what others feared to say. In a hushed chamber, away from cameras, he whispered to his peers, "She is not grieving. She is maneuvering. We sit at the table with a predator who pretends to prey." But the others shook their heads, unwilling to believe. Her morning tour continued. And, as it did, the nets closed tighter. One evening, aboard her ship, she walked the quiet halls alone. She paused at a viewport, gazing out at a fleet assembling in the distance. Human ships, silent, waiting. To any alien sensor, they were scattered, harmless. To her eyes, they were lines on a chessboard. She smiled again, not the smile of a widow, but the smile of someone who knew her hand had been played with perfection. Her whisper, carried to no one but the empty corridor, was clear as a bell. They think sentiment hides weakness. But sentiment hides timing, and timing is everything. The lights dimmed. The stars burned cold. Her reflection in the glass smiled back, faint and terrible. And somewhere in the galaxy, another depot exploded. Another convoy vanished. Another admiral went missing. The widow of the human general sipped her wine in silence. Her lips curved. The galaxy had not yet realized what storm she had set in motion. But soon, very soon, they would. It began as murmurs, whispers in council chambers and military halls. Convoys gone silent, admirals who failed to return from routine inspections, shipyards scorched to ash by fires that seemed too precise to be accidents. No one wanted to say it aloud, but the question rippled through the ranks of the empire and its allies. Was the widow truly grieving, Or was she orchestrating something far greater than her husband's funeral? The Empress of the RYL, a creature of porcelain scales and honeyed venom, laughed when her advisors voiced concern. One woman? A mate clinging to the shadow of her warrior? You credit humans with too much guile. They are loud, they are impulsive, but they are not cunning. A widow cannot shake empires. Yet her words carried more doubt than conviction, and the assembly could hear it. For even those who despised humans had begun to notice the pattern. Their fleets, once dismissed as clumsy and underpowered, moved like ghosts now. They appeared where defenses were weakest, vanished before reinforcements arrived. It was not the work of chance. It was design. On the world of Kalos, where the sky shone a permanent copper and the air thrummed with static, an entire garrison woke to silence. Their supply chain had been severed overnight. Communications dead. Armories emptied. The soldiers patrolled in confusion, their claws tapping against the stone streets. And then, projected into their skies, came the face of the human widow. Her voice was gentle, carried through the stolen comms with terrifying calm. You will not be harmed if you abandon your posts and go home. I'm sure your families miss you. The Empire won't tell you that, but I will. Go home. Think of peace. Think of sacrifice. Some obeyed. Others resisted and vanished in fire when human drones struck with surgical precision. The survivors carried the story with them. Entire regiments fled future engagements at the mere rumor of her presence. Alien scholars tried to unravel the paradox. How did a woman with no fleet under her direct command orchestrate attacks across dozens of systems? Some argued humans had developed stealth technology beyond comprehension. Others claimed it was psychological warfare, illusions meant to create fear. The truth was simpler, though no less terrifying. She had been the strategist all along. Her husband had wielded the sword, but she had chosen where it fell. Now, with him gone, she wielded both. A meeting was convened in the High Council of the Empire. The chamber was vast, lined with banners of subjugated races. Representatives filled the tiers, scaled, furred, feathered, crystalline. At the center, the Emperor's voice boomed from hidden speakers. Humanity seeks vengeance. It must be crushed before their arrogance spreads. The widow sat in the gallery, veiled in black, as though still a mourner. Her hands rested in her lap, her expression serene. When the Emperor's decree ended, the council erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others urged caution. A few suggested humanity might yet be placated with concessions. She rose slowly, as though reluctant to speak, and the chamber hushed despite itself. You speak of crushing us, she said softly, her words caught by microphones and carried into every listening ear. But you forget, we were crushed once before on our own world. We crushed ourselves with fire and steel, cities falling to ashes, skies black with our own doing. And yet here we are. The council murmured uneasily. A winged delegate sneered. You boast of savagery as though it were wisdom. She smiled. Wisdom is knowing what savagery costs, and choosing it anyway, when peace demands it. For a heartbeat the council sat in stunned quiet. Then the arguments resumed, louder now, but beneath it all was the ripple of unease. Her words lingered like the echo of a predator's growl in a cave. Reports spread faster than decrees. On the fringes of the galaxy, miners swore they saw human ships slip from shadows, take what they needed, then vanish. Merchants told tales of convoys rerouted by false signals, their cargoes stolen, yet their crews spared with courteous messages, signed only with a widow's seal. An admiral in the Zelthari fleet found his own strategies anticipated, his ambush outmaneuvered before it even began. On the wreckage of his flagship, scorched into the hull, were words in human script. Smile more. The phrase spread like contagion. Soldiers muttered it before battle. Civilians whispered it in markets. Smile more. The humans had written a taunt, a warning, a philosophy. What did it mean? No one could agree. Some said it was mockery, others a threat. But in every interpretation, fear rooted deeper. One night, on a station orbiting the jewel-blue world of Silas, The widow sat with a group of alien dignitaries at a banquet. Laughter rang around the table, though it was brittle. They had learned to hide their unease with derision. A bloated senator, scales gleaming with oils, leaned across and said, "Tell us, widow, why do you humans grin when you fight? Is it madness or ignorance?" She tilted her head, her eyes kind, her voice almost playful. "Neither," she said. "We smile so our enemies can't tell whether we're losing. And by the time they think to wonder, it's already too late." The table stilled. Forks froze. Even the servers, carrying trays of glowing delicacies, hesitated. Then the senator laughed too loudly, forcing mirth back into the air. But the others avoided her gaze. Her ship left the next morning. That same night, the Silas orbital docks erupted in coordinated sabotage, every warship crippled before it could launch. No human vessel was ever detected nearby. But across the ruined station walls, painted in white, was the same message: "Smile more." The phrase became a storm. Fleets began to mutiny. Commanders second-guessed orders, fearing they walked into traps. Entire systems begged to defect from the Empire's grasp, pleading for peace before humanity turned its gaze toward them. And still, she said nothing directly. She sent no declarations of war, no manifestos, no threats. Only smiles, only courtesies, only polite conversations that seemed harmless until the destruction followed. Her aides noticed the change in her. Once she had whispered to her husband's coffin that she was lightning. Now, in the quiet of her quarters, she no longer whispered. She stood before windows showing the sprawl of stars, and she spoke aloud. "They thought killing you would stop the storm. But storms don't end when thunder fades. Storms end when the lightning burns everything it touches." The humans who served under her never doubted. They had seen what she planned long before the galaxy caught scent of it. They moved in silence, loyal, efficient, their faith anchored in her composure. When she smiled, they smiled. When she gave orders wrapped in anecdotes, they obeyed. They called her the general's general. But the galaxy called her something else: the widow's shadow. A myth already half-ghost, half-strategist, a figure who turned grief into fire. Some claimed she was not human at all, but an avatar of Earth's brutal past, a spirit clothed in mortal form. The Emperor could no longer ignore the tremors. He issued decrees demanding the extermination of human enclaves, the seizure of human trade lanes, the silencing of their voices and councils. Yet for every decree, another system burned. For every denunciation, another admiral disappeared. And then came the broadcast. Every world awoke to it, screens flickering, comms hijacked. The widow's face appeared, calm, framed in black. She looked into countless alien eyes, and spoke as though to each of them personally. "I was his wife," she began, voice steady. "I am still his wife. They thought killing him would silence us. But humanity has never been silenced. We sang while bombs fell on our own cities. We laughed while the world froze beneath ash. We endured hunger, plague, fire, steel. And when we had nothing left, we endured still. Do you know why?" She leaned forward slightly, her smile small, almost tender. "Because we remember. We remember every loss, every cruelty, every betrayal. And memory is heavier than metal. It crushes the hand that tries to wield it. You killed my husband, but you will not kill our memory. And from memory comes vengeance." The transmission cut. Across the galaxy, silence followed. And then chaos. Markets collapsed as rumors spread of humanity's unstoppable advance. Border worlds declared independence. Soldiers deserted. Admirals refused orders, afraid to face the widow's shadow. Even species once loyal to the Empire began to hedge their alliances, whispering of defecting before the storm reached them. The galaxy trembled. And in its trembling, the widow moved unseen, weaving tighter snares. Every silence became her ally. Every rumor became her blade. In the dark of her command chamber, she studied star maps glowing across the table. Her aides waited silently. She touched one system, then another, connecting them with a fingertip. The pattern emerged, a web across the Empire's heart. "They've mistaken me for grief," she said. her voice barely above a whisper. But grief was only the mask. "This," she gestured to the map, the spreading fire across the stars. "This is who I am." Her smile returned, faint, terrible. And when she looked up, her eyes gleamed with the light of the stars she had already set ablaze. The night before the flames, the widow stood alone in her command chamber. Maps stretched across the table like constellations, glowing lines tracing the arteries of an empire too arrogant to think they could be severed. Her fingers hovered above them, not trembling, not uncertain, but reverent, as though she were not planning war, but conducting a requiem. Behind her, the aides waited in silence, their loyalty as absolute as gravity. When she finally spoke, her words were barely above a whisper. They thought his death ended the storm. But tonight, the thunder answers back. The order spread through encrypted channels, faster than any fleet could travel. Human ships, scattered across forgotten systems and asteroid belts, suddenly stirred from silence. Convoys revealed themselves as battle groups. Medical transports unveiled hidden armaments. Civilian ships unfolded into carriers. It was not chance. It had been preparation, long in the making, hidden in the smiles and anecdotes she had left trailing in council halls. The first strike fell on Arwael. The Empress's fleets, confident and bloated with wealth, found themselves severed from fuel depots in a single night. Human squadrons darted in, cutting through supply lines with surgical precision, leaving hulks adrift like gutted whales. On the comms, the human soldiers played strange music, guitars thrumming, voices singing of heartbreak and highways. The aliens called it madness, war chants, yet the rhythm haunted them long after the battles ended. On Kalos, the garrison that had once heard her gentle voice returned to find themselves under her command, not their emperors. Entire units defected willingly, their officers muttering that it was better to serve the predator who smiled than to be devoured by the arrogance of the empire. Across the galaxy, others followed. Fear is a weapon sharper than steel, and she wielded it with perfect grace. The emperor raged. His decrees thundered across the stars, demanding loyalty, demanding blood. He sent fleets, titans of war meant to crush humanity once and for all. But each time, the widow's trap snapped shut. She drew them into ambushes, let them believe they pursued shadows only to find themselves surrounded. Admirals who had mocked humanity now begged for mercy over open comms. Their voices breaking before silence cut them off forever. The galaxy watched, trembling, as human strategy unfolded not with brute force, but with artistry. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried across the stars. "We do not strike first," she said in a broadcast intercepted by a dozen systems. "We only finish what was begun when they killed him. We are gardeners, tending soil with patience. But burn our fields, salt our ground, and you will see what grows in fire." Aliens who had once smirked at human sentiment now spoke her words with reverence, terrified and awed. Some called her the Black Widow, others the Lightning Wife, still others the Stormbringer. Names mattered little. What mattered was that no one, no admiral, no emperor, no council, could look at the sky without wondering if her shadow lingered there. The climax came in the Empire's heart, their capital system, surrounded by fleets larger than most species could dream of, glittered with confidence. They had prepared for frontal assaults, for sieges, for brute force. They had not prepared for her. Her fleets did not rush forward. They emerged like dancers, cutting through outlying systems first, unraveling the defenses thread by thread. Communications blacked out. Supply depots burned. Stations meant to anchor their fleets collapsed into debris. By the time the Corps realized the trap, the noose was already drawn. Inside the Emperor's throne hall, the banners of conquered worlds hung heavy, their colors mocking the silence that settled as alarms screamed outside. The Emperor himself, tall and gilded in armor, stood with fury etched into his features. "Bring me your head," he ordered, though no one moved to obey, because the doors had already opened. She entered without fanfare, without trumpets or guards. Her dress was still black, simple, unadorned. Her hair was bound tightly, her steps soft on the polished stone. She looked less like a conqueror than a mourner walking through a graveyard. And yet every soldier who raised a weapon against her hesitated, their hands trembling, their eyes caught by that smile. The emperor sneered. "Widow of a dead general, you dare come here?" Her voice was calm, polite, almost tender. "I am not his shadow. I am his echo, and echoes linger longer than thunder." He raised his blade, a ceremonial weapon forged to symbolize dominance over countless worlds. "You think you frighten me with sentiment? You are nothing without him." Her smile deepened, soft as velvet, sharp as a knife. "Then it's fortunate I am not without him. He was the sword. I am the hand that wields it." The emperor lunged. But before his blade could fall, the palace shook. Human ships had breached orbit, striking with such precision that even the emperor's guards faltered. Firelight poured through shattered windows. The widow moved faster than anyone expected, her movements exact, efficient, honed not in duels, but in the practice of inevitability. She disarmed him with a single twist, the blade clattering across marble. For a moment he stared into her eyes and saw no rage, no madness, only composure, terrifying in its serenity. "This was never revenge," she whispered as the chamber filled with the roar of collapsing defenses. "This was deterrence." Her hand moved, and the emperor fell. Outside, the empire's fleets burned. Operation Funeral Pyre was not just a battle. It was an orchestration of fear, precision, and inevitability. Worlds long oppressed rose in rebellion, emboldened by humanity's storm. Systems that had mocked humans now begged for treaties, desperate to avoid the fire. The widow's name spread faster than any fleet, whispered in tones of dread and reverence. And when the fires dimmed, when the ashes settled, she did not declare victory. She stood before the galaxy in a final broadcast, her face lit by the glow of burning fleets. Her voice was quiet, but it carried with the gravity of stars. "You see us now. You see what happens when you take from us what cannot be returned. Do not mistake this for conquest. Do not mistake this for hunger. We are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are simply human, and humans remember. So remember us as we remember you. Choose peace, and we will smile with you. Choose war, and we will smile still, but you will not." The screen faded. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. Her aides found her later, standing alone once again in her chamber. She gazed out at the stars, at the trails of fire where once there had been fleets. Her hand rested lightly on the glass, her reflection faint. She did not weep. She did not laugh. She only smiled, soft and small, as though sharing some private joke with a man no longer there. "They'll remember you," she whispered to the void. "And through you they'll remember me." The galaxy trembled still, but it was a different trembling now. Not the tremor of arrogance, but the trembling that comes when prey finally realizes it has never been predator at all. The widow turned, her black dress sweeping the floor like shadow. Around her, aides bowed their heads, not to a general's widow, but to the strategist who had rewritten the balance of stars. She moved past them in silence, her smile steady, her eyes alight with a fire no empire could extinguish. For storms do not end when thunder fades. They end only when the lightning has burned everything it touches.